Hey, I'm live. Hey, John, what's up? Uh, I've been looking for my mum's old cowboy boots. That's why I'm late. I have to find my place in Dracula. And I didn't set up the sound because, not the sound, the lights. But I'm sure we'll manage somehow. Right. Gonna catch myself up to what we did last time on Dracula. What's going on with my hair today? We don't usually start until a few minutes in, so recap time. Last time on Dracula, time before last on Dracula, the boys, Arthur Seward, Jack Seward, the doctor, and two people in chat. Oh, lip balm. Don't forget lip balm when you're going on the internet. I call it lip balm, it's just Vaseline in a tin. Yeah, last time on Dracula, the boys, they all mounted a little expedition to Dracula's house, which ended up just being a bunch of them running around in the dark in a basement, scaring each other, and realizing that of the 50 boxes of earth that Dracula brought to London, I think there are only 29 left. Yeah, so that was quite scary. They've left Mina out of all of their meetings. She's just like not part of it anymore, which she's finding very difficult. So she's keeping a diary. So, you know, I don't have any secrets from Jonathan, even if he needs to have secrets from me. And Jonathan doesn't really seem that thrilled with leaving Mina out of it, because he's the smartest one of all the guys and he's really not that bright. So they go to Dracula's basement with their torches, and a bunch of rats run out and they all get freaked out in the dark and run around and have a lovely time. They come home, Mina's asleep. She sleeps in like all morning into the afternoon, and she seems a little pale and tired, and her diary records that she had a weird dream about some mist that grew red eyes. No one's putting the pieces together because Mina's being Dracula. Apparently his powers extend to gaslighting, and the boys are just not smart enough. So that's pretty much what's happening. Mina is also crying a lot, like at the drop of a hat, and I think that Van Helsing mentioned earlier that, you know, she's a new bride, so maybe she might be in a he alluded to it in some kind of really Victorian way, but that she might be with fetus. And I mean, the crying, that makes sense. Don't know. It's just kind of an extra layer that may or may not be actually going on. And Quincy Morris hasn't done anything particularly to make me think that he is in league with Dracula, but he gave Lucy blood, and then after that she didn't actually get better, she got sicker. But then again, he was the third person to give her blood. Fourth. And she was, you know, dying at the time. So that's a little bit suspicious, but not really. Oh, and then when Van Helsing was vampire, Harker's half vampire baby. We know what happens when a pregnant lady gets Dracula to death. You get Blade, the Daywalker. I really should watch Blade 3. I'm told that it's a masterpiece of being terrible. Oh, Quincy Morris, the other thing he did was Van Helsing had a meeting, with all the guys and not Mina, to discuss Dracula's weaknesses and his powers. And in the middle of his really long, boring speech, Quincy Morris reckons he sees a bat at the window, and he goes outside and shoots at it with a gun. Oh my god, I'm allergic to YouTube somehow. I have not set up the lighting. I haven't moved anything. Weird. Yeah, so maybe Dracula was out there and he wanted to just kind of pop out and inform him of things. And the gunshot was just a cover. I don't know. Arthur Homewood, who Quincy Morris has been staying with, says that Quincy has been out, wandering in the nighttime. I think I must be. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's something I put on my hair. No, nothing makes sense. So maybe Quincy Morris has been out roaming the night shooting at bats. Or maybe he slips out at night fairly often to meet with Dracula and tell him things. We don't know yet. I mean, we're never going to know because it's just a fan theory. But the evidence so far could go either way. So that is almost where we left off. Renfield has met with Mina again, and he's crying. He's very sad because, well, he won't tell her why, but he's very sad. And so when we left off, it was with Mina's diary, and she was saying that that all the boys were going, they'd all been out on various different places during the day. Jonathan's been tracking down the boxes of dirt, and I can't remember what the others are doing. And now they're all going to meet to talk about it after dinner. And Mina has been sent to bed. Like literally, she says, after dinner they sent me to bed. Which, so fucking hell, she's not very sleepy. Probably because she's been sleeping all day. She asked Dr. Seward to give her a little bit of an opiate, and he gave her a sleeping draft. She's writing in her diary, being like, "Oh yeah, I've taken it, so just writing in my diary till I fall asleep." Oh, hang on. I hope I have not done wrong, for as sleep begins to flirt with me, a new fear comes that I may have been foolish in thus depriving myself of the power of waking. I might want it. Here comes sleep. Good night. She's the only one thinking these things. Oh no, Fitz is out there meowing like he's got something. Not my problem right now. Oh, he's probably got the catnip mouse that Niobe dragged outside. Alright, we are 8 minutes in, and we usually kind of start at about 10 minutes in. So I'm not going to open the door, but I'm going to look out the window. Nothing. We can start. Presumably with the boys getting together and sharing their info. There's not much point in getting together and sharing all your information with a bunch of other guys who are just as dumb as you. What conclusions are you going to draw? But anyway, chapter 20, Jonathan Harker's journal. Oh, and today has been brought to you by my friends who are so incredibly kind to me. I will never know why. But That's what makes today possible. Power of friendship and people doing shit for me when my brain goes away. Jonathan Harker's journal, 1st October evening. I found Thomas Snelling in his house at Bethnal Green, but unhappily he was not in a condition to remember anything. The very prospect of beer which my expected coming had opened to him had proved too much, and he had begun too early on his expected debauch. I learned, however, from his wife, who seemed a decent poor soul, that he was only the assistant to Smollett, who of the two mates was the responsible person. So off I drove to Walworth, and found Mr. Joseph Smollett at home and in his shirt sleeves, taking a late tea out of a saucer. He is a decent, intelligent fellow, distinctly a good, reliable type of workman, and with a headpiece of his own. I just love the condescension to all the working classes. It's great. Damn, he works for a living, and yet it's almost like there's a human mind in there, just glimmers of intelligence. He remembered all about the incident of the boxes, and from a wonderful dog's-eared notebook which he produced from some mysterious receptacle about the seat of his trousers, and which had hieroglyphical entries in thick, half-obliterated pencil, he gave me the destinations of the boxes. It's a pocket, Jono, it's not complicated. There were, he said, 6 in the cartload, which he took from Carfax and left at 197 Chicksand Street, Mile End, Newtown, and another 6 which he deposited at Jamaica Lane, Bermondsey. Maybe not. Maybe only working men have pockets at this point, because all the gentlemen have some guy to carry their shit for them all the time. I don't know. I don't know enough about Victorian men's trousers. There are gaps in my education. Well, then Jonathan probably wouldn't call it a mysterious receptacle. He'd probably know. Honestly, the sniffling, I don't know what it... Oh, Christ, he's got some dialogue coming up. Oh, boy. Bram, you're killing me. If then the Count meant to scatter these ghastly refuges of his over London, these places were chosen as the first of delivery, so that later he might distribute more fully. The systematic manner in which this was done made me think that he could not mean to confine himself to 2 sides of London. He was now fixed on the far east of the northern shore, on the east of the southern shore, and on the south. The north and west were surely never meant to be left out of his diabolical scheme, let alone the city itself and the very heart of fashionable London in the southwest and west. I went back to Smollett and asked him if he could tell us if any other boxes had been taken from Carfax. He replied, "Well, governor, you've treated me very handsome." I had given him a half a sovereign, and I'll tell you all I know. I heard a man by the name of Bloxham say 4 nights ago in the Air and Ounds in Pincher's Alley, as how he and his mate had a rare dusty job in an old house at Perfect. There ain't a many such jobs as this here, and I'm thinking that maybe Sam Bloxham could tell you summut. I asked if he could tell me where to find him. I told him that if he could get me the address, it would be worth another half sovereign to him. It's a coin. A big one. So he gulped down the rest of his tea and stood up, saying that he was going to begin the search then and there. At the door he stopped and said, "Look here, governor, there ain't no sense in me a keeping you here. I may find Sam soon or I mayn't, but anyhow, he ain't like to be in a way to tell you much tonight. Sam is a rare one when he starts on the booze. If you can give me an envelope with a stamp on it, and put your address on it, I'll find out where Sam is to be found and post it you tonight. But you better be up after him soon in the morning, or maybe you won't catch him. But Sam gets off main early, never mind the booze the night before." I'm wondering about Victorian people just writing things down in this bizarre accent. I know it's not a bizarre accent, it's just... This is how upper-class Victorians and middle-class Victorians enjoyed themselves, by reading the speech of working-class people written down. crazy. This was all practical, so one of the children went off with a penny to buy an envelope and a sheet of paper, and to keep the change. When she came back, I addressed the envelope and stamped it, and when Smollett had again faithfully promised to post the address when found, I took my way to home. We're on the track, anyhow. I'm tired tonight and want sleep. Mina is fast asleep and looks a little too pale. Her eyes look as though she'd been crying. Poor dear, I've no doubt it frets her to be kept in the dark, and it may make her doubly anxious about me and the others. But it is best as it is. It is better to be disappointed and worried in such a way now than to have her nerve broken. The doctors were quite right to insist on her being kept out of this dreadful business. I must be firm, for on me this particular burden of silence must rest. I shall not ever enter on the subject with her under any circumstances. Indeed, it may not be a hard task after all, for she herself has become reticent on the subject, and has not spoken of the Count or his doings ever since we told her of our decision. Yes, my love. Someone was screaming at the door. Jonathan really thinks that Mina's nerve can be broken by anything. He doesn't know it well enough yet. 2nd of October evening. Still Jonathan Harker's journal. A long and trying and exciting day. By the first post, I got my directed envelope with a dirty scrap of paper enclosed, on which was written with a carpenter's pencil in a sprawling hand, Sam Bloxham, Corcoran's, 4 Porter's Court, Bartle Street, Walworth. Ask for the deputy. Deputy? Depite? It's written in like person who can't spell well spelling. I got the letter in bed and rose without waking Mina. She looked heavy and sleepy and pale, and far from well. Heavy and sleepy and pale is pretty much my aesthetic at the moment. I determined not to wake her, but that when I should return from this new search, I would arrange for her going back to Exeter. I think she would be happier in our own home, with her daily tasks to interest her, than in being here amongst us and in ignorance. Bitches love doing the dishes. Josh, the universe understands your brand, and they admire it. Welcome. All you've missed is Jonathan Harker's diary, where he went to find a working class man to find out where Dracula had sent his coffins. Apparently, he's seeing them all over the city, various places in London, so he has places to hide. And also, Mina is sleepy. Jonathan wants to send her back to Exeter because he thinks she'll be happier in our own home with her daily tasks to interest her than in being here amongst us and in ignorance. Yeah. So, being at home, washing the dishes, getting some sweeping done. I mean, that kind of shit is what women love. It's so entertaining. All of them. You could forget that your husband was hunting a vampire if you just had some incredible washing to put on the line. But they're just married, he's still learning. The guard cat's staring outside. Nope. I thought it was someone coming up the stairs. Is it? It's very exciting today. No, it's somebody visiting the neighbours. It did sound close, but it is just the neighbours. I only saw Dr. Seward for a moment and told him where I was off to, promising to come back and tell the rest as soon as I should have found out anything. I drove to Walworth and found with some difficulty Potter's Court. Mr. Smollett's spelling misled me, as I asked for Potter's Court instead of Potter's Court. However, when I had found the court, I had no difficulty in discovering Cochrane's lodging house. When I asked the man who came to the door for the deputy, Deepite, he spelled it wrong. Yeah, in fairness to Jonathan, that's true. He is the most switched on of all the boys, but he's still a dummy. She wants to go out now. She's going to yell at me in a second. They're having a party. I wouldn't mind the party so much, but I don't fucking hate their music. Anyway, when I asked the man who came to the door for the Deepite, he shook his head and said, I don't know him. There ain't no such person here. I never heard of him in all my bloomin' days. Don't believe there ain't nobody of that kind living here or anywheres. It's spelt like despite, but without the S. I took out Smollett's letter, and as I read it, it seemed to me that the lesson of the spelling of the name of the court might guide me. What are you? I asked. I'm a working-class man, he said. We are as human as you. He said, I'm the deputy, he answered. I saw at once that I was on the right track. Phonetic spelling had again misled me. A half-crown tip put the deputy's knowledge at my disposal, and I learned that Mr. Bloxham, who had slept off the remains of his beer on the previous night at Cochrane's, had left for his work at Poplar at 5 o'clock that morning. He could not tell me where the place of work was situated, but he had a vague idea that it was some kind of new-fangled warehouse, and with this slender clue I had to start for Poplar. It was 12 o'clock before I got any satisfactory hint of such a building, and this I got at a coffee shop where some workmen were having their dinner. One of these suggested that it was being erected at Cross Angel Street, a new cold storage building. It's in quotes. And as this suited the condition of a newfangled warehouse, I at once drove to it. An interview with a surly gatekeeper and a surlier foreman, both of whom were appeased with coin of the realm, put me on the track of Bloxham. He was sent for on my suggesting that I was willing to pay his day's wages to the foreman for the privilege of asking him a few questions on a private matter. I know what's happening. This is the first ever Law and Order detectives bothering a guy who's unloading boxes. It's the first time that happened. It's amazing. He was a smart enough fellow, though rough of speech and bearing. When I had promised to pay for his information and given him an earnest, he told me that he had made 2 journeys between Carfax and a house in Piccadilly, and had taken from this house to the latter 9 great boxes, main heavy ones, with a horse and cart hired by him for this purpose. I asked if he could tell me the number of the house in Piccadilly, to which he replied, Well, governor, I forgets the number, but it was only a few doors from a big white church or something of the kind, not long built. It was a dusty old house too, though nothing to the dustiness of the house we took the bloomin' boxes from. I feel like Dick Van Dyke, except I know that what I'm doing is wrong. How did you get into the houses if they were both empty? There was the old party what engaged me a waiting in the house at Purfleet. He helped me to lift the boxes and put them in the dray. Curse me, but he was the strongest chap I ever struck, and him an old fellow with a white moustache, one that thin you could think he couldn't throw a shadow. How this phrase thrilled through me. Oh, thrilling. Why, he took up his end of the boxes like they was pounds of tea, and me a puffin' and a blowin' before I could upend mine anyhow, and I'm no chicken neither. How did you get into the house in Piccadilly? I asked. He was there too. He must have started off and got there afore me, for when I rung of the bell, he came and opened the door himself, and helped me to carry the boxes into the hall. The whole 9? I asked. Yes, there was 5 in the first load and 4 in the second. It was main dry work, and I don't so well remember how I got on. I interrupted him with a sniffle because I'm allergic to peanut butter. Do you want to go outside? She's going to scream at me to come back in. I really need a cat door. The landlord won't do it. I interrupted him. Were the boxes left in the hall? Oh, yes, it was a big hall, and there was nothing else in it. I made one more attempt to further matters. You didn't have any key? Never used no key nor nothing. The old gent, he opened the door herself and shut it again when I drove off. I don't remember the last time, but that was the beer. Was it? And you can't remember the number of the house? No, sir. But you needn't have no difficulty about that. It's a iron with a stone front with a bowl on it, and high steps up to the door. I know them steps, having had to carry the boxes up with 3 loafers what come round to own a copper. The old gent give 'em shillings, and seeing they got so much they wanted more, but he took one of them by the shoulder and was like to throw him down the steps, till a lot of them went away cussing. I thought that with this description I could find the house, so having paid my friend for his information, I started off for Piccadilly. I had gained a new painful experience. The Count could, it was evident, handle the earth boxes himself. If so, time was precious, but now that he had achieved a certain amount of distribution, he could, by choosing his own time, complete the task unobserved. At Piccadilly Circus, I discharged my cab and walked westward. Beyond the Junior Constitutional, I came across the house described and was satisfied that this was the next of the lairs arranged by Dracula. The house looked as though it had been long untenanted. The windows were encrusted with dust, and the shutters were up. All the framework was black with time, and from the iron the paint had mostly scaled away. It was evident that up to lately there had been a large notice board in front of the balcony. It had, however, been roughly torn away, the uprights which had supported it still standing. Behind the rails of the balcony I saw there were some loose boards whose raw edges looked white. I would have given a good deal to be able to see the notice board intact, as it would perhaps have given some clue as to the ownership of the house. I remembered my experience of the investigation and purchase of Carfax, and I could not but feel that if I could find the former owner, there might be some means discovered of gaining access to the house. All you need is a vampire to get in. And, keep ignoring your wife, you're likely to have one soon. Yeah. Well, it's not like he could text, but, you know. God, I hate their fucking music so much. Sorry, my neighbours. Ugh. It's just so nice. It's like nice, relaxing music for nice people. It's like, do you not understand anything about what's going on in the world? How can you be relaxed by anything? But anyway, there was at present nothing to be learned from the Piccadilly side, and nothing could be done, so I went round to the back to see if anything could be gathered from this quarter. The mews were active, the Piccadilly houses being mostly in occupation. I asked one or two of the grooms and helpers whom I saw around if they could tell me anything about the empty house. One of them said that he heard it had lately been taken, but he couldn't say from whom. He told me, however, that up to very lately there had been a notice board of for sale up, and that perhaps Mitchell, Sons and Candy, the house agents, could tell me something, as he thought he remembered seeing the name of that firm on the board. It's Mr. Mitchell, and he got his sons into the family business by telling them there would be candy. When he shows up to show you around a house, it's just him and his 2 large sons just eating handfuls of candy. It's the only way you can get them to work, I think. I'm something of a scholar by asking myself questions and then just kind of looking in my heart. I did not wish to seem too eager or to let my informant know or guess too much, so thanking him in the usual manner, I strolled away. It was now growing dusk, and the autumn night was closing in, so I did not lose any time. Having learned the address of Mitchell, Sons and Candy from a directory at the Berkeley, I was soon at their office in Sackville Street. The gentleman who saw me was particularly suave in manner, but uncommunicative in equal proportion. Having once told me that the Piccadilly house, which throughout our interview he called a mansion, was sold, he considered my business as concluded. When I asked who had purchased it, He opened his eyes a thought wider and paused a few seconds before replying, "It is sold, sir." "Pardon me," I said with equal politeness, "but I have a special reason for wishing to know who purchased it." Again he paused longer and raised his eyebrows still more. "It is sold, sir," was again his laconic reply. He's laconic as fuck. Him and Quincy Morris would really get along. "Surely," I said, "you do not mind letting me know so much." "But I do mind," he answered. "The affairs of their clients are absolutely safe in the hands of Mitchell, Sons and Candy." This was manifestly a prig of the first water, and there was no use arguing with him. I thought I had best meet him on his own ground, so I said, "Your clients, sir, are happy in having so resolute a guardian of their confidence. I am myself a professional man." Here I handed him my card. Sorry, it's funny. I know that like he means he's in a profession, he has a job, but I am a professional man. I walk around telling women to smile and taking ideas that I heard from my colleagues who are not quite so privileged as I am. I'm a man, it's what I do. No offense. All the men I know are awesome, so. Here I handed him my card. In this instance, I'm not prompted by curiosity. I act on the part of Lord Godalming, who wishes to know something of the property which was, he understood, lately for sale. These words put a different complexion on affairs. He said, "I would like to oblige you if I could, Mr. Harker, and especially would I like to oblige his lordship. We once carried out a small matter of renting some chambers for him when he was the Honourable Arthur Homewood. If you will let me have his lordship's address, I will consult the house on the subject, and will in any case communicate with his lordship by tonight's post. It will be a pleasure if we can so far deviate from our rules as to give the required information to his lordship." I wanted to secure a friend and not to make an enemy, so I thanked him, gave the address at Dr. Seward's, and came away. It was now dark, and I was tired and hungry. I got a cup of tea at the Aerated Bread Company and came down to Purfleet by the next train. I found all the others at home. Mina was looking tired and pale, but she made a gallant effort to be bright and cheerful. It wrung my heart to think that I had to keep anything from her and caused her inquietude. Thank God this will be the last night of her looking on at our conferences and feeling the sting of our not showing our confidence. It took all my courage to hold to the wise resolution of keeping her out of our grim task. She seemed somehow more reconciled, or else the very subject seems to have become repugnant to her, for when any accidental allusion is made, she actually shudders. I am glad we made our resolution in time, as with such a feeling as this, our growing knowledge will be torture to her. Maybe. Could be torture to her. Could let her figure out what's happening to her. I don't know. I'm not a professional man. I could not tell the others of the day's discovery till we were alone. So after dinner, followed by a little music to save appearances even amongst ourselves, I took Mina to her room and I left her to go to bed. The dear girl was more affectionate with me than ever, and clung to me as though she would detain me. But there was much to be talked of, and I came away. Thank God the ceasing of telling things has made no difference between us. Oh, he really loves her. He's just being peer pressured by all his friends and the entire society he lives in to not tell her everything. When I came down again, I found the others all gathered round the fire in the study. In the train, I had written my diary so far, and simply read it off to them as the best means of letting them get abreast of my own information. When I had finished, Van Helsing said, "This has been a great day's work, friend Jonathan. Doubtless we are on the track of the missing boxes. If we find them all in that house, then our work is near the end. But if there be some missing, we must search until we find them. Then shall we make our final coup and hunt the wretch to his real death." We all sat silent a while, and all at once Mr. Morris spoke. "Say, how are we going to get into that house?" "We got into the other," answered Lord Godalming quickly. "But this is different. We broke house at Carfax, but we had night in a walled park to protect us. It'll be a mighty different thing to commit burglary in Piccadilly, either by day or night. I confess I don't see how we're going to get in unless that agency duck can find us a key of some sort. Perhaps we shall know when you get his letter in the morning. Lord Godalming's brows contracted, and he stood up and walked about the room. By and by he stopped and said, turning from one to another of us, "Quincy's head is level. This burglary business is getting serious. We got off once all right, but we now have a rare job on hand, unless we can find the Count's key basket." The amount of sexual innuendo you can find in a Victorian novel is just limitless, especially if you have that kind of mind. Some say it's the mind of a child. I say it's the mind of a child prodigy. They got off okay, but now they're looking for the Count's key basket. As nothing could be well done before morning, and as it would be at least advisable to wait till Lord Godalming should hear from Mitchell's, we decided not to take any active step before breakfast time. For a good while we sat and smoked, discussing the matter in its various lights and bearings. I took the opportunity of bringing this diary right up to the moment. I am very sleepy and should go to bed. ... Just a line. Mina sleeps soundly and her breathing is regular. Her forehead is puckered up into little wrinkles, as though she thinks even in her sleep. She is still too pale, but does not look so haggard as she did this morning. Tomorrow will, I hope, mend all this. She will be herself at home in Exeter. Oh, but I am sleepy. That ends his entry. And now we're up to the point where Mina had just taken that powerful opiate, well, mild, they said, and wondered if it was so wise to completely lose consciousness and not be able to wake up. I mean, she was only almost alone in an insane asylum where one of the inmates is super into her. And next to a Dracula house. I think she knew that much. But now we have to go back one day with Dr. Seward's diary. So back to the 1st of October. I am puzzled afresh about Renfield. His moods change so rapidly that I find it difficult to keep touch of them, and as they always mean something more than his own well-being, they form a more than interesting study. This morning, when I went to see him after his repulsive Van Helsing, his manner was that of a man commanding destiny. He was, in fact, commanding destiny, subjectively. He did not really care for any of the things of mere earth. He was in the clouds and looked down on all the weaknesses and wants of us poor mortals. I thought I would improve the occasion and learn something, so I asked him, "What about the flies those times? What about the flies these times?" He smiled on me in quite a superior sort of way, such a smile as would have become the face of Malvolio, as he answered me, "The fly, my dear sir, has one striking feature. Its wings are typical of the aerial powers of the psychic faculties. The ancients did well when they typified the soul as a butterfly." I thought I would push his analogy to its utmost logically, so I said quickly, "Oh, it's a soul you're after now, is it?" His madness foiled his reason, and a puzzled look spread over his face as, shaking his head with a decision which I had but seldom seen in him, he said, oh no, I want no souls. Life is all I want." Here he brightened up. "I am pretty indifferent about it at present. Life is all right. I have all I want. You must get a new patient, doctor, if you wish to study zoophagy." Zoophagy? The eating of animals? This puzzled me a little, so I drew him on. "Then you command life. You are a god, I suppose." Jack Sewer's got no idea what he's doing. Then again, he's only 29. He smiled with an ineffably benign superiority. "Oh, no. Far be it from me to arrogate to myself the attributes of the deity. I'm not even concerned in his especially spiritual doings. If I may state my intellectual position, I am, so far as concerns things purely terrestrial, somewhat in the position which Enoch occupied spiritually. This was a poser to me. I could not at the moment recall Enoch's appositeness, so I had to ask a simple question, though I felt that by so doing I was lowering myself in the eyes of the lunatic. And why with Enoch? Because he walked with God. I could not see the analogy, but did not like to admit it. He calls Dracula master. He's feeling great these days. He's talking about how he feels like he's walking with God. It's Jack Seward's face, and it's like the Sherlock words that come up when he's thinking. But for Jack, it's just question marks. Nope, there's just no way. Can't put it together. I could not see the analogy, but did not like to admit it, so I harked back to what he had denied. So you don't care about life and you don't want souls? Why not? I put my question quickly and somewhat sternly, on purpose to disconcert him. The effort succeeded, for in an instant he unconsciously relapsed into his old servile manner, bent low before me and actually fawned upon me as he replied, I don't want any souls, indeed. Indeed, I don't. I couldn't use them if I had them. They would be no manner of use for me. I couldn't eat them, or... He suddenly stopped, and the old cunning look spread over his face, like a windsweep on the surface of the water. And, Doctor, as to life, what is it, after all? When you've got all you require, and you know that you will never want, that is all. I have friends. Good friends. Like you, Dr. Seward. This was said with a leer of inexpressible cunning. I know that I shall never lack the means of life. I think that through the cloudiness of his insanity he saw some antagonism in me, for he at once fell back on the last refuge of such as he, a dogged silence. After a short time I saw that for the present it was useless to speak to him. He was sulky, so I came away. Somehow he sensed that I wasn't sorry, just checking that the back of my phone doesn't have any personal information on it. That'll be weird. Later in the day, he sent for me. Ordinarily, I would not have come without special reason. Yeah, because God forbid a lunatic needs to see his mental health professional. But just at present, I am so interested in him that I would gladly make the effort. Besides, I am glad to have anything to help pass the time. Harker is out following up clues. And so are Lord Godalming and Quincy. Van Helsing sits in my study, poring over the record prepared by the Harkers. He seems to think that by accurate knowledge of all details he will light upon some clue. Like how figuring shit out actually works. Thinks, hey, maybe if I know everything about this, I could think about it more better. I could put some facts into my brain. And maybe... Well, that's why he's an eccentric foreigner. He does not wish to be disturbed in the work without cause. I would have taken him with me to see the patient, only I thought that after his last repulse he might not care to go again. There was also another reason. Renfield might not speak so freely before a third person as when he and I were alone. I found him sitting out in the middle of the floor on his stool, a pose which is generally indicative of some mental energy on his part. When I came in, he said at once, as though the question had been waiting on his lips, "What about souls?" It was evident then that my surmise had been correct. Unconscious cerebration was doing its work, even with the lunatic. Exactly. Facts are what lunatics want. Unconscious cerebration was doing its work in the lunatic. Your surmise was that if you talk to Renfield about a thing, His mind, lunatic though it is, would think about that thing and perhaps wish it to discuss it later. Sorry, I'm getting my words all mixed up because Jack Seward can go fuck himself. Unconscious derivation. I determined to have the matter out. What about them yourself? I asked, professionally. He did not reply for a moment, but looked all round him and up and down as though he expected to find some inspiration for an answer. I don't want any souls, he said, in a feeble, apologetic way. The matter seemed to be preying on his mind, and so I determined to use it, to be cruel only to be kind. Didn't think you were doing that already, Jack. No, because you don't know what you're doing. So I said, you like life, and you want life. Oh, yes, but that's all right. You needn't worry about that. But, I asked, how are we to get the life without getting the soul also? This seemed to puzzle him, so I followed it up. A nice time you'll have sometime when you're flying out there, with the souls of thousands of flies and spiders and birds and cats buzzing and twittering and meowing all round you. You've got their lives, you know, and you must put up with their souls. I feel like everybody in the chat knows what a horrifically bad thing this was to do to a person who is mentally ill. To be like, yeah, you like to eat flies, but yeah, you got all their souls in your tummy. Anyway, let's get you right to live in the community, pal. Fuck you, Jack. Fuck you. Yeah, I'm starting to feel that. I'm starting to feel he might be a bad guy. Exactly. Oh my god. Have you ever thought about developing a few new delusions? One of them might work for you. Something seemed to affect his imagination, for he put his fingers to his ears and shut his eyes, screwing them up tightly, just as a small boy does when his face is being soaked. There was something pathetic in it that touched me. It also gave me a lesson, for it seemed that before me was a child. Only a child, though the features were worn and stubble on the jaws was white. It was evident that he was undergoing some process of mental disturbance, and knowing how his past moods had interpreted things seemingly foreign to himself, I thought I would enter into his mind as well as I could and go with him. Yeah, exactly. He's using the old lady who swallowed a horse method. Jack has had the completely novel idea about playing along with a patient's delusion to learn more about it. He's inventing these things as he goes. The first step was to restore confidence, so I asked him, speaking pretty loud so he would hear me through his closed ears, would you like some sugar to get your flies round again? He seemed to wake up all at once and shook his head. With a laugh, he replied, not much. Flies are poor things, after all. After a pause, he added, but I don't want their souls buzzing around me all the same. Or spiders? I went on. Blow spiders. What's the use of spiders? There isn't anything in them to eat, or... He stopped suddenly, as though reminded of a forbidden topic. So, I thought to myself. This is the second time he has suddenly stopped at the word drink. What does it mean? He's being so clever to be so stupid. Oh, God, it's like when Flora learned that she could jump onto the top of the washing rack and sleep up there, but she didn't learn that she needed her entire body to land up there already, and that if she only jumped up halfway, the weight of her bomb would pull the entire thing over. I mean, it's kind of like that. She's not actually traumatizing a person with a mental illness, though. Actually, she's helping me, if anything, because it is hilarious every time. Renfield seemed himself aware of having made a lapse, for he hurried on as though to distract my attention from it. I don't take any stock at all in such matters. Rats and mice are such small deer, as Shakespeare has it. Chicken feed of the larder, they might be called. I'm past all that sort of nonsense. You might as well ask a man to eat molecules with a pair of chopsticks, as to try and interest me about the lesser carnivora, when I know of what is before me. I see, I said. You want big things that you can make your teeth meet in. How would you like to breakfast on elephant? What ridiculous nonsense you were talking. He was getting too wide awake, so I thought I would press him hard. I wonder, I said reflectively, what an elephant's soul is like. The effect I desired was obtained, for he at once fell from his high horse and became a child again. I don't want an elephant's soul, or any soul at all, he said. He was becoming lucid, and thus a threat to me. So I said something fucked up to make him have another mental breakdown. Doctor. For a few moments he sat despondently. Suddenly he jumped to his feet with his eyes blazing and all the signs of intense cerebral excitement. To hell with you and your souls, he shouted. Why do you plague me about souls? Haven't I got enough to worry and pain and distract me already without thinking of souls? He looked so hostile that I thought he was in for another homicidal fit, so I blew my whistle. The instant, however, that I did so, he became calm and said apologetically, Forgive me, doctor, I forgot myself. You do not need any help. I am so worried in my mind that I am apt to be irritable. If you only knew the problem I have to face and that I am working out, you would pity and tolerate and pardon me. Pray do not put me in a straight waistcoat. I want to think, and I cannot think freely when my body is confined. I'm sure you will understand. He had evidently self-control, so when the attendants came, I told them not to mind, and they withdrew. Renfield watched them go. When the door was closed, he said, with considerable dignity and sweetness, Dr. Seward, you have been very considerate towards me. Believe me that I am very, very grateful to you. I thought it well to leave him in this mood, and so I came away. There is certainly something to ponder over in this man's state. Several points seem to make what the American interviewer calls a story, if one could only get them in a proper order. Here they are. Will not mention drinking. Fears the thought of being burdened with the soul of anything. Has no dread of wanting life in the future. Despises the meaner forms of life altogether, though he dreads being haunted by their souls. Logically, all these things point one way. He has assurance of some kind that he will acquire some higher life. He dreads the consequence, the burden of a soul. Then it is a human life he looks to. And the assurance, merciful God, the Count has been to him, and there is some new scheme of terror afoot. He got there in the end. He got part of the way there in the end. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The doctors we have to deal with at the moment, pretty good bunch, all told. None of them ever freaked me out by telling me I was haunted by a bunch of ghost flies. So, I should say thank you, really. No. He's talking about animals. There's nothing in them to eat or what? Oh, drink. What is in an animal to drink? Blood. Redfield's talking about walking with God. Who does he think is God? Dracula. Dracula drinks. Oh, my mind. Oh, I was nearly there. I couldn't get it. I'm sorry. I was nearly there. Ghost flies would be fucked up. Wouldn't that be fucked up? Wouldn't that stop you sleeping at night? Could even drive you quite, quite mad. Later, I went after my round to Van Helsing and told him my suspicion. He grew very grave, and after thinking the matter over for a while, asked me to take him to Renfield. I did so. When we entered, as we came to the door, we heard the lunatic within singing gaily as he used to do in the time which now seems so long ago. He is a bozo, you're right. Or a bazoo. That's the MFC bazoo. When we entered, we saw with amazement that he had spread out his sugar as of old. The flies, lethargic with the autumn, were beginning to buzz into the room. We tried to make him talk of the subject of our previous conversation, but he would not attend. He went on with his singing, just as though we had not been present. He had got a scrap of paper and was folding it into a notebook. We had to come away as ignorant as we went in. His is a curious case indeed. We must watch him tonight. Ah, bzoo. Clever. I thought you were just calling Dr. Seward a bozo, because that's what he is. Letter. Mitchell, Sons and Candy to Lord Godalming, 1st October. My lord, we are at all times only too happy to meet your wishes. We beg, with regard to the desire of your lordship, expressed by Mr. Harker on your behalf, to supply the following information concerning the sale and purchase of number 347 Piccadilly. The original vendors are the executors of the late Mr. Archibald Winter Suffield. The purchaser is a foreign nobleman, Count de Ville, who effected the purchase himself, paying the purchase money in notes over the counter, if your lordship will pardon us using so vulgar an expression. Beyond this, we know nothing whatever of him. We are, my lord, your lordship's humble servants, Mitchell, Sons and Candy. He's such a clown that space and time don't matter anymore. I'm just gonna spell out his name in chat. He's the Count. Oh. It's written all in lowercase. It almost seems like there's some kind of other meaning. Dracula's mysterious beings. Oh yeah, we're not far from the end now. I know, because we're like an hour in. Dr. Seward's diary, 2nd October. I placed a man in the corridor last night and told him to make an accurate note of any sound he might hear from Renfield's room, and gave him instructions that if there should be anything strange, he was to call me. After dinner, when we had all gathered round the fire in the study, Mrs. Harker having gone to bed, we discussed the attempts and discoveries of the day. Harker was the only one who had any result, and we are in great hopes that his clue may be an important one. This is the night that Mina takes her sleeping pill. Before going to bed, I went round to the patient's room and looked in through the observation trap. He was sleeping soundly, and his heart rose and fell with regular respiration. I don't think they meant to say heart. I think they meant to say, like, chest. Cruella de Vil was a vampire, and we know this. Before going, oh no, I haven't done that. This morning, the man on duty reported to me that a little after midnight he was restless and kept saying his prayers somewhat loudly. I asked him if that was all. He replied that it was all he heard. There was something about his manner so suspicious that I asked him point blank if he had been asleep. He denied sleep, but admitted to having dozed for a while. It is too bad that men cannot be trusted unless they are watched. First thing I've agreed on with Jackie Seward. Today Harker is out following up his clue, and Art and Quincy are looking after horses. Godalming thinks it would be well to have horses always in readiness, for when we get the information which we seek, there will be no time to lose. We must sterilize all the imported earth between sunrise and sunset. We shall thus catch the Count at his weakest and without a refuge to fly to. Van Helsing is off to the British Museum. looking up some authorities on ancient medicine. The old physicians took account of things which their followers did not accept, and the professor is searching for witch and demon cures which may be useful to us later. I sometimes think we must all be mad, and that we shall wake to sanity in straight waistcoats. You're not mad, Jack. You're just dumb. Dumb. A dumb idiot. Dumb. Later, we have met again. We seem at last to be on the track, and our work of tomorrow may be the beginning of the end. I wonder if Renfield's quiet has anything to do with this. His moods have so followed the doings of the Count that the coming destruction of the monster may be carried to him in some subtle way. If we could only get some hint as to what passed in his mind between the time of my argument with him today and his resumption of fly-catching, it might afford us a valuable clue. He is now seemingly quiet for a spell. Is he? That wild yell seemed to come from his room. The attendant came bursting into my room and told me that Renfield had somehow met with some accident. He had heard him yell, and when he went to him, found him lying on his face on the floor, covered with blood. I must go at once. ... The end of the chapter. So, very exciting. Dr. Seward has just spent 2 days winding up one of his patients. And now something happens. It's the ... It's the ellipsis. It makes it so exciting. If he just put a full stop, then it wouldn't be as action-packed. Yeah. Healthcare at its finest. So, yeah. We had no Mina point of view this chapter, which sucks. I am a doctor. I know all the ways to drive lunatics mental, which is what doctoring is in this time. I know no way to cure them. That would be unrealistic. But I know how to drive them mental in other ways. Anyway, I'm 29 and I'm in charge of my own lunatic asylum. I fucking hate Dr. Seward. I'm surprised really because the first time I read it, I found Jonathan's bits really boring. But now I'm like, you know what? He's doing really well for all he's been through and seems to really love and respect his wife. And he's actually pretty onto it with figuring things out. Not at the beginning when, you know, everyone was saying don't go to the castle and trying to give them crucifixes. Not then. But he didn't have all the facts back then. So yeah, I'm really actually enjoying Jonathan Harker. But yeah, thanks everybody. It was really nice being able to read for you. I think I've done my dash for stuff today. I might stream some Stardew Valley later, I don't know. But yeah, I hope that was entertaining for everybody. Jonathan's redemption arc. Yeah, he's being redeemed from being such a big dummy, total doofus in the first couple of chapters. Well, he married Mina, so I think her, like half her intelligence stat gets added to his. Or is it just half her intelligence bonus? Not sure. I don't really know how it works. But seems to be working out for Jono a little bit. But yeah, thanks everybody. This was really good. And yeah, stay safe out there. Wash your hands a bunch. I don't know. But yeah. Yeah, and I set it up before other people were also self-isolating. Yeah. So I'm going to pick something to read after this, and I may switch to Twitch because I think it's easier to send out alerts and things. I don't know. Thanks for being here, Father Dog. John, I will never stop licking people on the street, okay? The eyeball is a hygienic place to lick a stranger. Okay, you can't catch nothing. You catch a contact lens sometimes, but as long as you don't swallow it, you're usually fine. Yeah. Thank you all very much for being here. You've cheered me up. It was it's been a rough time. But it's been a rough time for the whole world, so I'll see you tomorrow, which is Thursday, for more Dracula. Stay safe from viruses and from Draculas, and stay smart. Bye, everybody.